Hi. Good morning, folks. My name is Tom McLaughlin. I'm a columnist for various outlets, including the Conway Sun, and Mark is publisher of that paper, and Mark Guerringue, that paper and some others. And he's agreed to be sitting in the left chair for the last few years now. I don't know how long it's been, but it's been a couple of years, I think.
So. I think so.
So, yeah, he's become the most regular person over there.
Is that because I'm the healthiest?
Healthiest? Well, do you mean that physically, mentally, emotionally? Yeah. Well, you seem like a pretty healthy guy.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks we'll have another history teacher from Fabric Academy has agreed to sit in the left chair. He'll be a new face for the show.
Oh, good.
And anyway, here we are. As always, it seems like there are more and more things. You know, it's in order to determine what we're going to be talking about. It's okay. Well, we won't have time to talk about all those things that are all of them hanging fire. All of them very important in this election year. But as always, we have two questions from our producer, and I'll start with the first one, which he likes us to do, and it says, if the intelligence regarding Russia paying the Taliban to kill American soldiers is true, what is an appropriate way for the United States to respond to Russia? Well, I don't know what to make of that. As to the truthfulness of those reports that mainstream media have jumped on and claim that Trump was ignorant of these alleged payments by Russia to, but I don't know if I look at it, regardless of whether they're true or not. I expect if they were true, I wouldn't be shocked because, well, when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, 1980 or so, 1979, the United States was paying people to kill Russian soldiers and those Afghans that were loyal to the Russians. We did that for 10 years. And then when the tables turned and the United States went into Afghanistan in 2001, December, in order to go after bin Laden, of course, the Russians then started to try to counteract our attempts over there, and have a quid pro quo. And so, even though the Soviet Union has collapsed since then, and now it's Russia under the control of Vladimir Putin, whether he's the nominal president or not, he's in control. I think everyone agrees with that. Would he try and undermine the United States? He's no friend of the United States. We've known, he pretends to be and smiles at Barack Obama or President Bush or whomever, but he's not. He's not a friend of the United States, never has been. So was he? Maybe. I wouldn't be at all surprised if he was. Now, are these, I haven't looked at it, and mostly it was allegedly leaked from unnamed U.S. intelligence sources. Now, CIA, FBI, Defense Intelligence, all our myriad intelligence agencies in the federal government, of which there are at least 12 or 13, which of them has, they're huge, they're enormous, their staffs are enormous, and they are civil employees, they're not political appointees, and Trump would say, well, they're part of the deep state. I believe there is a deep state. I don't think you do. And I think they're anything to make Trump look bad. And I suspect, especially unnamed sources, anonymous sources, I just don't give credibility to them. All right, I've talked enough. I could go on, but I'll let you must have some things.
It's interesting that you characterize Russia as not a friend. I mean, is that sort of like, Nazi Germany wasn't a friend of ours? I mean, I think Russia's pretty consistent.
Hostile.
Yeah. So not a friend is just an interesting
No, that was
way.
an understatement.
A little bit of an understatement, yes. So I think the question isn't that. I mean, you bring up that we did it to the Russians, and we've certainly done a whole bunch of things. Our military, and that's what they do in the military, right?
Yeah,
Fighting a war. So what Russia's doing, being a disruptor, is certainly not surprising. They're trying to create a wedge that Trump is following to disrupt NATO. I mean, all these things that Trump is falling into is really undermining the Western alliance and undermining our country, whether it's trying to influence the election in 2016. And so this is just another thing. So the fact that the Russians, if they did it, is just not surprising, right? It's not surprising.
Yeah.
The soldiers, like there were 3 or 4 American soldiers that were killed that they somewhat linked. They said it possibly could be as a result of these bounties, and the mothers there's an outcry, they want to get to the bottom of this. So it's not about the Russians, it's about Trump. And so how he's reacting to it. And then the Associated Press, which reported that John Bolton, then National Security Advisor, personally briefed Trump on the Russian scheme back in 2019. And New York Times did a story where they traced the money between some connections having to do with the Russians and the Taliban. So there's a fair amount of evidence. And the fact that John Bolton said he briefed the president would be fairly significant. And so, I suppose, so it seems like there's some validity to the whole idea that it happened. So the question is why doesn't, now we know that President Trump doesn't really pay attention in his briefings, and that when the top security people brief the president, they have to basically draw pictures, because he doesn't want to read, and he's just not that interested in security issues. So so one explanation is that he just didn't listen. Like he just didn't want to hear it, he didn't want to listen, or whatever. But it seems like the actual accusations, there probably some truth to it. So then it becomes, even if he missed it, you would think, now we all know that I don't think Trump has ever criticized Putin, that you'd think at least after the fact he would have said, look, if this happened, this would be an outrage and a blah, blah, blah. Instead, his reaction is to include him in the G7 and make it a G8. And apparently when this story came out, he had, just in the last 2 weeks, he had like 6 phone calls with Putin. So he has regular communication with him. So to me, it's just another story about Trump sucking up to Putin that we've heard over and over again. And, and it could be, because one of the things that John Bolton said, and we probably get into this too, about when Trump retweeted that, that video from the villages in Florida with the guy going white power. You saw that?
I think I did, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it was, I saw a brief thing of a guy with his window down in a car.
Well, he was in a golf. I mean, the villages. The villages in Florida.
No.
Well, the villages in Florida is like the middle class retirement center of the United States. It is literally started off as a retirement, and there are a lot of people here who live there, and a lot of people's parents live there from here, and certainly from the Northeast and the Midwest, Upper Midwest. I mean, Michigan and those industrial states. So what started as a little village is literally now either 40, 60, or 80,000 people.
And so what does that have to do with Putin?
Well, what I'm saying, it doesn't really, but I'm just making the case about John Bolton, is that when Trump retweeted the guy in a golf cart, with a Trump sign on the front, and then as he was going by, he went white power, right? And then Trump retweeted it, and he was criticized for retweeting something so...
What? He was criticized for retweeting something?
Yeah, something so racist, saying white power. And I know you don't believe that would be considered systemic racism, the fact that a lot of people are still racist, but the point I'm trying to make, let me just finish it and we can move on from this, is that it just seemed like how could the president, even if he believed it in the white power, which he does, I mean he believes that, then how could he do it just politically? Like how can he just believe, why would he retweet something that's so obviously racist?
You think Trump believes in white power. What do you mean by that? If he believes in as if in white supremacy, and that he thinks whites are superior to blacks?
Well, I don't know about superior, but I think he believes in we're preserving our nation as a white nation. I mean, that's what he's always been anti-immigrant. He's anti-black. I mean, now it's about the leftists and the Black Lives Matter. But the point, let me just finish this point. So what I'm saying is that so it seems like incredulous, even politically, that it would be smart for anybody to retweet something that says white power. It's obviously flagrantly racist, right?
I think it's stupid.
Okay, it's stupid. So it's stupid.
Yes.
You call it. I mean, you can make. I mean, that's the either he agrees with the sentiment of white power, right, which is a racist statement. Do you believe that? White power.
Well, I would have. In the past, I would have believed that. Yes.
Okay.
And I'm not sure I do now, given the context of this huge political unrest and violence centered around Black Lives Matter and Antifa, and all of the charges, which I think are outrageous charges, are made against the United States of America by people who ally themselves with Black Lives Matter. And I'm old enough to remember the Black Power movement back in the 1960s, and the symbol being this,
right.
a black forearm and fist and so forth, and that was a major political statement. At the time, I was, of course, shocked at the violence in the late 1960s that was done in black neighborhoods around the country for various reasons, and some of them, I think, understandable given that the remnants of Jim Crow still around at the time, and some real examples of white racism against blacks. Today, if someone said white power, I acknowledge that there are groups of racists that American Nazi Party, Ku Klux Klan, and others, Aryan Nation and so forth, measurements of them that have been done. Every other member of the Ku Klux Klan is an FBI informant. The FBI has so totally infiltrated the movement since the 1960s that we know a lot about them, and affiliated groups. A minuscule group, tiny numbers. So, white power, do they say white power? It would be stupid to say. I wouldn't use the term.
Right,
no.
but it seems like it's even if you were aware, even if you had some new enlightened definition of white power that you're trying to express, that it's in reaction, it's an obvious racist statement. It was racist 5 years ago.
It
was
does
racist
have
10 years ago.
racist
So
connotations in
if
almost
you can't-
everyone's mind.
Right.
Yes.
So if you can't,
it's stupid to use
right.
it.
So it's
Yes.
not stupid unless you believe it. So that's the thing. So I guess you're rationalizing. I think it's pretty easy to, whether you agree with it or not. I think it's not that I'm not asking you very much. When you say white power, that's just a racist statement.
Okay,
Okay, I appreciate
I'll grant you that.
Okay, let me get back to John Bolton though. So everybody
I was wondering how we went off
yeah,
on
where
this
are we going?
tangent.
So the point is that when Trump retweeted it, whether he's racist or whether he's stupid, okay, so let's just if you retweet something that says white power, you're either racist and you're the president. You're racist, you agree with that sentiment, or you're stupid.
Okay,
So I agree
with
with that. Okay,
yeah.
so, but what John Bolton said, which I thought so too, right? John Bolton said the third possibility with Trump. He just didn't watch the rest of the video.
Now you're back to this Putin paying
okay,
Taliban.
this is my point. So this is my point. So John Bolton said about the white power tweet, the third alternative is that Trump never saw the white power. Like he saw the beginning first 5 seconds.
I think
he
that's
didn't see
probably the case.
Right, so which
Yeah.
is the way he operates. So that's the way John Bolton is saying, like when he gets these press briefings, he just doesn't pay attention. Like he's just not aware of it. So that's how I am giving Trump the benefit of the doubt that he pays so little attention to these foreign policy briefings that he could have missed it. I don't believe it. I'm just giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Oh, I expect that third possibility that
Yeah.
you just mentioned is likely the one.
Right, but once he found out, there's still, if he's out there blasting everybody for everything, why doesn't he ever say, and those Russians, we're not sure they did it, but if they did it, we're going to put on sanctions or whatever. Why doesn't he even address it? That's my point. That's where I'm leading to. And I rest my case, Tom McLaughlin.
Well, good. All right, that was quite a circuitous route. You believe Trump is racist. That's
Yeah,
what
I
I
do.
got from you. I do not.
He's had a whole history of it back from New York City. you know.
We've been through. We've
Yeah,
been
we've
there.
been through that.
Allegedly, when his father said we're not going to rent to blacks.
Not allegedly, there were real
apartment
charges.
Buildings.
Not allegedly, there were real charges.
He was sued by as violations of civil
Okay,
rights.
do you want to go back to that?
I don't. I'm
Okay.
just saying that is your. We've been here.
We've been there,
done,
right?
yes.
And he, you know,
And so
yeah.
now, I don't think Trump is racist. You've made the case. I don't think so. I think mainstream media is trying very hard to paint him that way, and I think going to extraordinary lengths, embarrassingly foolish statements in reaction to his speech. Did you see his speech in South Dakota
I didn't see
on
the
the
whole
4th of
thing.
July? Did you read any of it?
Yeah.
Now, you say, not you, I watched the whole thing, okay? I thought it was a great speech. I don't think he wrote it. I think some speechwriters wrote it. He stuck to the script. He only diverged from it only occasionally when he happened to repeat a statement that he liked, and that's his way. He does that often. But it was a great speech that is for
A third of the
praising
country.
the United States of America. Anyone who believes that the Constitution is the greatest governing document ever written, which I do believe, and anyone who knows about it, I'd challenge anyone to say that there's a better one, and here it is over here, because it doesn't exist. And we've used this Constitution for over 2 centuries.
Yeah.
We've implemented it,
I'm
and
nothing
it
against the
has
Constitution.
that has made America great, that Constitution. And it was based on the ideals espoused in the Declaration of Independence some 25 years before. And then it was the country was modeled around those ideals outlined by Thomas Jefferson. And then it was written by mostly James Madison. All these guys were Virginians. They all owned slaves. Any upper middle class or upper class Virginian tended to own slaves. It was unusual if they did not. So because they were slave owners, therefore, nothing else matters that they did. They are to be trashed. Their monuments are to be torn down. The United States, founded on the principles espoused by those men whose faces are on Mount Rushmore, not Madison, but the other two, then they're to be vilified now. So Trump did not talk about them owning slaves. He talked about the good things those men did by establishing this country, the greatest country in the history of the world, the most just country in the history of the world. Not perfect, certainly not. There's not going to be one, ever, a perfect country. For the New York Times then, the people who wrote these headlines could not have seen the speech. Either that, or they intentionally misrepresented, thinking that most Americans will not have heard the speech, or those of us who did see the speech and know what was said will be too impotent to respond to they can write the narrative, even if it's based on nothing. The New York Times said, President Trump delivered a dark and divisive speech at Mount Rushmore, leaning into the culture wars and barely mentioning the pandemic. It wasn't about the pandemic. It was about it was the 4th of July celebration of the Declaration of Independence. A dark and divisive speech? There was nothing dark and divisive about it. That was their headline. Washington Post. At Mount Rushmore, Trump exploits social divisions, warns of a left-wing cultural revolution in a dark speech ahead of Independence Day. He did warn of a left-wing cultural revolution. Yes, he did. And what else would you call what is going on all around us? Over to you.
Who said, what president and what speech said, we are the land of abandoned factories, economic angst, and rising crime?
What speech said that?
Yeah, what president? Just take a guess. What president would say? Like, when do you think our country represented the land of abandoned factories, economic angst, and rising crime? If you had to guess what period in our history. I know there are plenty. In the last 50
Abandoned factories,
years.
well, that would be sometime since, I guess, Reagan.
Right. So my point is, that was part of Trump's inauguration speech.
Inauguration speech.
Inauguration speech.
Okay.
3 years
so now
ago.
we're back to 2017.
No. I'm just saying is that there are, not every word reflects every point of view. So yes, there were parts in Trump's view. Let me say that more clearly. There were parts in Trump's speech that reflect what you said about the America being all the good part of America. But there are three ways you could group speeches. One is that they are conservative based. One is that they are liberal based, and the other one is that they're just kind of in the middle. So just objectively, the tone of the Mount Rushmore speech was totally red meat, totally towards the conservative, his base. You don't say, okay, I'm just saying, you're blaming it on the media. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I saw excerpts and I read about it. So when he says there is a new far left fascism in corporate boardrooms, really, fascism.
Yes.
Who are they talking about?
I would say.
Facebook?
Talking about corporate boardrooms that are kissing butt to Black Lives Matter.
What do you mean
and
kissing
Antifa.
butt? What if
They say we support the
70% of the American people?
thrust of Black Lives Matter.
70% of the American people do. 70% of the American people do.
I agree with that.
That was the Monmouth poll. I read it. 70% Monmouth poll.
Monmouth poll. I never heard of the Monmouth. I
You've
guess I
never heard of
have,
it?
but it's
Yeah.
not one of the biggies.
70%.
I'm going to do to you what you do to me when I quote Rasmussen.
Okay, good. Look up Monmouth poll. 70% of the people who were demonstrating in Washington and New York were white.
Yeah. Okay. Recently,
Right. Yeah.
yes.
So
I would say.
what I'm saying is that
And
when he says
a high percentage of them that were starting fires and wrecking buildings and smashing windows also were white.
So he says, and angry mobs are trying to tear down our statues of our founders, deface our most sacred memorials, and unleash a wave of violent crime in our cities.
And you don't agree with that?
No.
What? Have you been watching television?
Have you been watching television
Yes,
besides
I have.
Fox News?
Yes,
Okay,
I have.
then
What do you watch? I don't know
what
what
do you watch? What do you think about the Confederate flag in Mississippi?
They're taking it off the flag.
Well, they must be just,
I don't have a problem with that.
isn't that just, okay, you're okay with that. So you have some,
I'm okay with them taking it off.
because you have some, why would you be okay with it? Why aren't they just,
Because it's up to the people of Mississippi what they want to do. And this is what they want to do, then that's what they should do.
Okay, do you agree with them taking it off?
Do I agree with them taking it off?
Do you think they should take it off?
I think that here's what I think. The Confederate flag is used as a symbol of racism. Could it be construed as a symbol of racism? As somebody used to teach U.S. history, I'd be foolish to say no, that it wasn't a symbol of racism,
Right.
because the slavery was one of the biggest causes of the Civil War, and the Civil War wasn't fought entirely to preserve racism, but it was one of the big factors.
Yeah.
And so I have to acknowledge that.
Right.
And so this flag is the one they carried. They lost, but now I'm gonna go over to Lincoln and say he wanted to bind up the nation's wounds, as he said in his second inaugural, and that to bring in the Confederate States as brothers, as full brothers, and to say that some of those men who fought and led the Confederate Army were honorable men, even though slavery was
Of course.
part of they were. And
Right.
so now to tear down their monuments, now I don't agree with that.
You don't?
I just don't. But to get rid of the flag, now what the flag symbolized the Confederacy. Well, I have mixed feelings about it. It's part of our history, and if you live in Mississippi and that's on your flag, then you're going to have to explain that. I picture myself as a teacher in Mississippi, and what does that symbolize? And I mean, I would use it as a teaching tool. The people of many of the people of Mississippi joined the Confederate Army. Most of those guys who joined, they were not slave owners.
Right.
They weren't.
Right. So
and they fought because the Union Army was down there, and they wanted to control their own destiny. And so this is what
Yeah,
And
most
so-
people, I mean, there's no
And to
question.
them, that, you know, the Confederacy was about states' rights, most of those guys.
Yeah, most people fight in wars for their own country. And then
And
they
they
really fight to
considered the
protect,
state their
protect their
country.
ass and your buddies.
They
Right.
considered the state their country, like
Exactly.
Lee did.
No, I totally agree, but that's not the point. The point is what it represents
Today.
today.
I think
and it always represented that. So if you're saying, so the Jefferson Davis statue.
I think that the flag represents different things to different people.
No, I realize
today.
that.
Yes.
I realize that. But I'm just asking you whether you think those Confederate flags should be flying.
That's not up to me to decide.
Well, I'm not saying
It's
to
up to the
decide. I'm
people
just
of
asking you
Mississippi
whether
to
we're having a
decide.
discussion here. I'm telling you that they shouldn't fly. I can say
Okay.
I have my opinion because they represent hate, and they represent what it does. They represent slavery and hate and oppression. So, do you not agree with that?
Here's what I think. I'm going to quote a former slave here.
Oh, well, there's always one
His
slave.
name is Booker T. Washington. You've heard of him.
Right.
All right? There is a certain class of race problem solvers who don't want the patient to get well, because as long as the disease holds out, they have an easy medium through which to make themselves prominent before the public. Now, he died in 1915, so this statement is well over 100 years old. He's a former slave, a leader of former slaves, acknowledged leader, head of the Tuskegee Institute. A brilliant man. And he recognized something then. He saw that racism can be a political football to be used to your advantage. And that is exactly what I see going on with Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter was founded by Marxists, self-admitted Marxists, two women who formed it. When Michael Brown allegedly put his hands up and said, "Don't shoot, hands up, don't shoot," he never said that. It was based on lies, the whole Black Lives Matter movement. And and the Trayvon Martin thing, which was way overblown, the Michael Brown thing was way overblown. Then that's what stoked
Well, you
the
already
fires.
said
I think the Democrat Party needs racism. People like Al Sharpton need racism, and if it starts to subside, and if people said, "Well, I think that this is an awful time in U.S. history, racism, and it had a long run,"
because you don't
but now
believe
I think
racism
it's largely under control. That takes away political power from the Democrat Party.
Why does
they
it
want to
resonate?
stoke the fires
Why
of
does
it, just as Booker T. Washington recognized.
Why does it resonate? I mean, that's the thing. So you're saying that the guy in the villages. So the guy in the villages who says white power, there's nothing racist about him? No, you don't think?
I don't know why he said
Okay,
that.
well,
he
it's
was
just
probably ticked off at what's going on, just as I'm ticked off at what's going on.
What about
I'm
the
not
guy?
gonna go and say
What about the guy?
racism
What about the
over
guy?
white
What about the
power.
guy in Madison who's the first responder? You don't know this because you don't read the paper carefully. But what about the guy in Madison, right here, Madison, who was kicked off the volunteer fire department because he was posting things that we should still have segregation? Is that racist?
If we should still have segregation?
Yeah, I mean, you think someone who believes in segregation, is that
Black
you consider that-
movements on college campuses want to resegregate. The state of California is repealing the California Civil Rights Initiative, which I'll read to you. And who controls the state of California? Totally under the control of Democrats. California Civil Rights Initiative passed in 1996. The state shall not discriminate against nor grant preferential treatment to any individual or group on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in the operation of public employment, public education, or public contracting. Now that is the American ideal.
That's not segregation, though, is it?
What?
Is that segregation?
It's against segregation.
Right.
Yes, but
it's,
the Democrats are resegregating.
I just asked you the question of
They're
what...
saying that black people don't have to wear masks in Washington State, but white people do. What the heck is the point of that?
I've
I
never
don't
heard
get
that.
what
I
the
haven't
point of
heard
that
that.
is. They are resegregating. They want
What?
the Democrat Party, the left. Now, when I say the left, I mean the Democrat Party, because
They want to have segregation in this country.
They want
The Jim Crow laws.
No, I said segregation. What is segregation? I'm going to segregate these these papers that have print on them from those that don't have print on them. It's just a separation of things. They're segregating.
Well, segregation in terms
by
of race.
class or by race or
Right.
by color, by
What
anything.
does segregation mean when it has to do with blacks?
It harkens back to Jim Crow.
Right, so that's what you believe in. We should have
No,
that.
it's not what I believe in. I'm telling you that the left wants to fire up racism as an issue because it has subsided to embers that are barely on fire at all, and they want to fire it up again. And that's what Black Lives Matter is doing. Do you know how many young black men were killed last year, unarmed young black men by police? 9.
No, that's not true at all.
Okay,
The whole,
not
in the
true at all.
country? In the country?
In this country.
No, there was like
9.
there were 1,000 people killed
That's
by...
what people think. Unarmed black men killed by police. 9. Unarmed white men killed by police. 19. This is overblown, completely overblown. And who is doing it? The left. And when Trump says that the left is trying to bring down the United States, he is absolutely right. I recognize this from when I was involved with some leftists trying to bring down the United States. That was exactly what
So you don't believe that Trump
was.
So why does James Mattis say that in his lifetime he's the only president that's a divider, not a uniter?
Who said that?
Mattis.
Yes, he did say that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So why does he say that? Why does John Bolton say that Trump is dangerous and he's not going to vote for him? Why did
Good
Trump?
question.
Yeah,
I have a lot of respect for both those men.
Yeah.
And so
wonder if
I
it
pay
means something.
attention.
Yeah,
When
but-
they say that,
Right.
I pay attention, and it troubles me.
If Trump isn't racist, why did he tell Bubba Wallace to apologize?
Because Bubba Wallace did what the Democrat Party is doing.
He didn't do anything.
He blew up something that wasn't even.
He didn't blow it up.
That was a fake hate crime.
It wasn't fake, and it wasn't. He didn't do anything.
He said, "How come there's a noose in my bay?"
He didn't
at
find
NASCAR.
it. He didn't find it.
Who did?
Somebody else did.
And then what? Then what did he say? It was the FBI put 14 agents on that case, and they determined that there was no racism involved. That every single bay in that garage had a noose in it. It wasn't.
Not every
didn't have
single bay
anything
had
to
a
do.
noose in it. So all the people rally around
The
Bubba.
FBI was wrong on
all
that.
the
Okay.
all the other drivers rally around him.
They did.
Bubba didn't do anything, and then Trump, instead of saying something sympathetic or just whatever, he says he should. What should he apologize for? What should Bubba apologize for?
For firing it up.
He didn't fire it up. He didn't do anything to it.
Yes, he did. When the FBI issued his report and said, "There's no evidence that this noose was put into your bay because you're a black race car driver. There's no evidence for that. Nothing." And he said, "Yes, there is." He went on CNN and he said, "I think that was done." There was no, based on no evidence. For that, he should apologize.
So you don't believe
because he was factually wrong.
You're making the point that you don't believe that racism exists in this country.
No, I didn't make that point.
Why
In
do you
that
think
particular instance, it did not. That's all I'm saying. Now, I think Trump does.
So when you say you're just so when you're saying you're tired.
You talk for a while.
No, go ahead. I know you're getting fired up about this. I think we can just agree that you don't believe that racism exists in any.
I didn't say that racism doesn't exist.
Well, you wrote a whole column about how systemic racism doesn't exist.
I said systemic racism, as the left defines it, does not exist. And if you look up the way the left uses that term, systemic racism, okay, let me give you another example. And Trump talked about these kids are being taught in our schools that America was based on racism. That is, and the New York Times did its 1619 project. They say that the United States history began in 1619 when the first slave was brought to Jamestown. They make the whole the United States wouldn't exist if they didn't have slavery in beginning then. That is a completely skewed view. They're trying to make the United States out to be an evil country.
No, that's not true at all. We're just trying to add.
I think that's exactly.
They're
true.
just trying to make a. They're just. Why are you afraid of the truth? You'd rather have. You'd rather go back to the old. What was the thing about Columbus sails the ocean blue and discovered America? You don't want kids to understand exactly what happened, wiping out the Indians and all that, and have some balanced view of America. Because once you understand it, then it helps you to think about issues currently and in the future. You can sugarcoat everything like the old textbooks did, and if that's the way you want to do it, I mean, that's just. But
left
we're
came after
a
me.
little more enlightened now.
The left comes after me when I write. Okay, I mean, I don't know how many times have I been called a racist in the papers of the Conway Sun and
Yeah,
the
well, you
Bridgeton
sound
News
like
and,
it.
and several other
You sound
websites.
like it.
I do. I sound like a racist. you
Absolutely.
think. Because I say that there is no such thing as systemic racism. That is a word that is a structural racism. Those are terms formulated by leftist leaders, most all of them Democrats, who are trying to stoke the fires of racism, to make it seem like we're born inherently racist, that white people are unconsciously racist. That offends me. That is itself a racist statement. Now, I wrote about this woman who started this 1619 project in my
Right.
column a few weeks ago. Did you see the stuff that she wrote as an alleged historian? It was off the wall.
According
That
to you,
woman, I
according to you.
cannot.
Yeah, well, you don't believe it, so it's
Don't believe
I mean,
it.
so when you say things like in your column, like I am tired of hearing about George Floyd, do you do
Yes,
that just
I am.
provocatively? I mean, you just do that to purposely to get a rise out of people, because we were trying to figure that out.
Because how many people were killed? How many young
I know,
black
but I know
men
it-
died in New York, in Chicago, or New York City,
Right.
and in St.
But
Louis,
you don't think it's a little-
and in Los
you
Angeles?
don't think it's just
that
generally-
is what don't those Black lives matter?
You
Yes,
don't-
they do. But we don't want to talk about those things because what they indicate is that there is a dysfunction within black
Nobody
families.
disagrees that there's a dysfunction. That
That young black men don't need to worry about white cops so much as they need to worry about other young black men.
not
that-
in South
that is my
Chicago-
point.
In South Chicago, maybe, but not the rest of the country.
I care about black lives. I care about all lives, but I don't want the Democrats are using this George Floyd thing to take the focus off of the dysfunction in black
No, they're
families
not.
in the
No, they're not.
Democrat cities around the country,
They're not.
which they have led for decades, because they are falling apart. Why are people leaving New York City? They're getting the heck out of there. Even they
Why?
even
'Cause
say that the virus is racist.
They're getting out of the New York City because why? Because the blacks? Is that what you're saying?
Because the left is making it unlivable. That's why. Because de Blasio wants to take $1 billion away from the police budget when crime has tripled. Murders have tripled. What party does he belong to? De Blasio is a leftist nutcase.
Okay, and I guess we'll have I don't even want to address that, Tom. I mean, that's,
Okay.
it's your view of the world. Let's talk about something we can both talk about, like monuments.
Like monuments?
Yeah, it's like, so.
That's going to go right there, too.
Well, so you don't believe, so you do, I think you do believe that the Confederate flag, the battle flag, is a racist symbol, and you're
it
okay
can be,
taking it
yes.
down.
I think
I
a
think
case
that-
could
yeah.
be made.
Now,
Yes.
in the same way that the Nazi flag, so do you think the Germans should have, to preserve history, do you think in the same way we should allow the Jefferson Davis statue to not exist out in a public square, but not in a museum, then Germany should have statues to Hitler? Because certainly there were lots of, probably 95% of the Germans who fought in World War II were just fighting for their country, right? They weren't Nazi Jew haters, they were just regular guys fighting, just the way the South was.
In the German army, in the
Yeah.
Wehrmacht. I think.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
generally
probably
speaking, there were
true.
millions and millions of people, Germans who fought and died in World War II, and most of them were just regular guys, particularly that the military was such an establishment there.
They were
just
nationalists.
They were
Yeah.
professional military people.
They were a pretty good army,
Right.
actually.
They're a great army. They actually, never mind. But I was just reading something interesting about that, is that if you took a battalion or just some number of German soldiers against American soldiers, they almost always inflicted many more casualties
Yeah.
than the
Oh,
Americans.
yeah.
Because they were better soldiers. They had
And they had better equipment.
yeah.
Yeah.
It broke down a little bit, but whatever. So but the point is that the Nazi flag now, which is, as you know, is illegal. And in 1946, we made it illegal.
Illegal
and occupied
where?
in Germany.
Okay.
And so in
Yeah.
1946, when we occupied it, we actually made it illegal, and then the German, whenever they formed their own government, also continued that.
Yeah.
So it's in that same spirit. So if So that's where I'm getting at with the Jefferson
You have a
Davis.
point.
So it depends on what the statues are put up for. Most of the Confederate statues were put up in the 20s and 30s, not 1800s.
Yeah.
And they were done as a show of white supremacy when the Jim Crow laws came.
And the Ku Klux Klan was experiencing a resurgence.
Right. So you agree that those statues should come down? Then we can agree
No,
on something.
here's what I think about the statues, and whether they should stay up or go down. I think that whatever municipality in which that statue exists, they should decide whether it goes up or stays down.
Oh, I mean, that's easy to say. That's not what you think. I mean, you think, I can say
That
that
is what
about
I
anything.
think.
You can say that about anything. I guess I'm asking your opinion whether they should come down.
That's my opinion. I just stated it. I think it's up to the people who live there. And if people in Germany want to put up a statue to Goebbels or somebody like that, I don't think they'd put one up to Hitler. That he's too inflammatory.
Yeah. Well, you're all wound up about taking, I mean, you agree with with the Mount Rushmore speech when he says they want to deface the most sacred memorials.
How about General Rommel? What if they had a statue to him? Now he was a great a German general, right? Tried to kill Hitler, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Was involved in the bomb plot. I think he's a great man. He was a brilliant military leader.
Yeah.
Ask any American general.
Right.
And he was a good man as well.
Yeah.
His soldiers respected him. They fought for him. I think he was an honorable man. He happened to be a Nazi general.
No, I agree. It depends on why the statue was put up. So I'm just saying you're just saying. So I'm bringing a couple points together here. One is that you're saying you should leave it up to local communities to take them down. You're just saying,
I do.
okay, that's
That
fine.
is
But then you also said what a great speech Trump gave when he just said to deface our most sacred memorials. He didn't say, oh, we live in an open society. We should leave it up to the states and the cities, municipalities to determine their own statues. He says angry mobs are trying to take down our sacred memorials.
I think Jefferson was a great man. I think Washington was a great man.
I do too.
Madison was a great man.
I do too.
And I don't think their statue should be taken down when Trump says that
Okay,
you're
well,
gonna
I was
defend them.
asking you about that.
I think he's right.
I was just asking. You just said that your opinion is that it should be up to the municipality. So if Washington, D.C. wants to blow up the Jefferson Memorial, you're okay with that?
If the people of Washington, D.C. want to do that, that's a federal. The District of Columbia is a federally
I guess what I'm trying to
thing.
conflate.
So no, I wouldn't.
What I'm trying to conflate,
that's a U.S. thing.
I'm trying to conflate your two notions that this was a great speech.
It was a great speech.
Except when he's talking about angry mobs taking down our sacred memorials. They're not angry mobs taking down our sacred memorials.
Are you kidding? Have you not watched this?
I don't watch Fox.
Oh, man.
Sorry.
It's not. Are angry mobs taking down our national memorials around the country? Yes, indeed they are. Absolutely
Are they taking down
are.
sacred memorials?
Are they sacred?
What's sacred?
They're sacred.
What's sacred?
Sacred pertains to God, but that is not.
But what the code
yeah, they're
is
sacred. Yeah, they are. They're sacred to people who love the United
States.
States.
And you're saying this is that. I'm going back to the Trump speech, and you wonder why people get fired up. Sacred memorials, Confederate memorials. That's the code.
They're not Confederate memorials. You're talking about Washington, Jefferson, and Madison. The Confederacy didn't exist until 1861.
No, they're not taking them down. Nobody wants to take down the obelisk.
Yes, they do. You kid? You're not watching.
You're not
paying attention.
I mean, okay.
If you don't think,
I will concede that there are probably some fringe people out there who do that, but it's certainly not any rational person, and certainly not 99% of the people who are marching in the streets today. Nobody wants to take down the friggin' George Washington.
Yes, they do. Oh, yes, they do. And Jefferson, they do. They do.
Okay, you gotta have to show me something more than just general.
How about Andrew Jackson?
That's a tough one. It depends on where it is.
I mean, there's a guy in Maine. Still haven't been able to find him. He's undercover. I don't know. He must be Antifa.
Yeah.
The guy he was arrested with was head of the group of Antifa that was taking down the Jackson Memorial. That's right in front of the White House. How can the president sit back and let that happen? He can't.
He didn't
has
sit
to
back
do
and let
something about that.
He didn't sit back and let it happen. He went and just cleared Lafayette Park.
But did you sit
for peaceful people? He
Are we taking down statues of Franklin Roosevelt too?
No.
I mean, excuse me, Teddy Roosevelt?
No.
Why? Oh, yes, we are. Yes, the angry mobs are taking down his statue as well. Who else? I lose track. People had nothing to do with racism. People that lived long after the Civil War. They're taking down, if they want, when Trump says they want to destroy the United States, they do.
I think you're, but
They do.
all right. Well, you're, you know, and this is why Trump's going to lose the election, because he's really
going to lose.
Yeah, he's going to lose. I mean, I know you've said that he's going to win, and he's down his poll. You know, he's way underwater with his polls everywhere. So why is that? Why is that, Tom? Because he's appealing.
Because people hate him.
Right. Most people. I mean, people hate him. Well, people don't. A lot of people hate him. Most people just don't agree with him, and the other big chunk of people think he's just totally incompetent.
You hate him.
I don't hate him.
The producer hates him.
I don't hate him. I don't
No.
hate. Hate is a funny word, Tom. I don't hate him. I think he's incompetent, and he doesn't. Whether he's right or left, he doesn't belong.
This
is probably the first time I believe what John Bolton says, and the fact that John Bolton says he's dangerous. I take that to the bank.
And Bolton said, I've read some of the excerpts from his book. I watched him interviewed by Bret Baier in about a 20-minute long interview, and Baier was asking him some tough questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like Bolton. I met him once. I don't know if I ever told
No.
you that. I did. I met him down in Washington at National Review.
What do you think of his mustache?
That's how I recognized him. He was sitting at this temporary bar way down the back of this function room, all by himself. I mean, there was nobody within 20 feet of him. And most of the people congregating at the other end of the room. I look back, I see this guy with this mustache. I said, I think that's John Bolton, the glasses and the mustache. And he's by himself. So I went over and started talking to him. I said, and he was the UN ambassador at the time. And I thanked him for what he was doing because I loved what he did there. I respect John Bolton. Even I don't fully understand what he's doing here.
You mean with the book?
With the book, I'm
What I didn't
going to take his his factual
that's a stumper
statement
for you.
His factual statements, then I must, I accept. But he reads into it what Trump's motivations are. He can't really do that as an historian. He can't do that. He can't say, here's what made Trump do this. He doesn't know that. Unless Trump said, here's what made me do this, and he heard,
so if you
he makes these interpretations, and he did it over and over with, and Bear zeroed in on that.
Yeah.
And he was right to do it. So I trust what Bolton said. And he is also, he's entitled to his interpretations. But I don't, maybe he's even right.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
a good one. So that's
okay.
The fact that you have, and I'm inferring something that you may not be implying, but the fact that you even say that he may be right is why Trump is going to lose the election. Because in 2016, the people who hated him, but there was a whole bunch of people who said, well, because remember Trump said, I'm going to be a boring president. He says, I'm going to be so boring that
because I'll have so many victories.
That you won't even know I'm there or something. But he used the word boring. So, but now
you're going to get tired of winning. That's what he said.
Yeah, and well, he said boring too, and
okay.
So, and that's where, and that's the difference is that people now see what he's like, and he's obviously not boring.
I don't really like the guy. I don't.
No. But the thing is that people are hesitating like you are when they hear John Bolton say dangerous, is why there's going to be those middle people who ain't voting for him, and he's done.
Could be.
Yeah.
Could
so
be.
we got 3 more months, and then we can get the virus under control once he's out. We don't have to him. I mean, he was just saying the other day that 99% of the people are fine with the virus. That's a good one. He said harmless.
Those who catch it.
Yeah, 99%.
Have mild symptoms.
No, that's not true. 1% of the people die who catch it. There's a whole bunch of people.
One small fraction of
15,
20%
of the people. Yeah, 1% of the people die.
No.
Yes.
Less than 1% of the people die.
We have, let's do the math.
There are studies that indicate what you say.
Oh, you were the
there are
herd
studies that indicate what I say.
What about the herd?
There is not. There's no agreement in the scientific community.
Immunity. I mean, you still believe in that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, they just had a big study.
You said Bolsonaro. One of the things you want to talk about is Bolsonaro's got the disease. All right.
Yeah.
So what?
Well, it's just it's just poetic justice that he was a big advocate of opening and doing the, you know, and there they got so many cases there they can't even count them. I mean, Brazil's a friggin' mess, and it's all because of the same way in the mixed messaging that we got Fauci saying we're in a heap of shit, and you get Trump saying no, it's under control, and he's been saying it. He's been saying it over and over, and now he's pressuring the schools to go back. He never will say anything nationalist. Usually he takes the same approach you do by saying, oh, it's up to the cities and towns and states to deal with the virus. But now all of a sudden he gets on a national platform to encourage kids to go back to school, the school systems to open, in the way he encouraged businesses to open. Remember that? Remember Liberate Michigan? So he's been on the wrong side. And Spain just released today.
Trump is, in your opinion, I don't know.
He is on the wrong. You don't think he's been on the wrong side of the virus from day one?
Nope.
Even when he said we have 15 cases and we'll be down to 1 at the end of February.
I think Fauci was on the wrong side of the virus. So was Andrew Cuomo. So was a whole bunch of people who didn't know what they were dealing with.
Why is Fauci still saying that we're in trouble and Trump is not?
Fauci.
So you don't think there's a coincidence that the fact that the red states, Florida and Texas and Arizona, who all were red states, who did not close down, and now they have the worst. They have the worst infection rates. You don't think there's a connection there?
All of us are going to get the virus. Almost all of us are going to get the virus.
No, that is not true at all. You know how many
herd immunity? We're all going to get it. We're not going to be able to prevent people from getting this virus. The best we can do is to slow down the rate at which people get it. That's the best we can do.
We're not all going to get it. They just released a big study in Spain, which it was in today's New York Times. It was probably false, obviously. It was New York Times, but Spain just did a big study, and they've determined that only of all what they've gone through, right? And Spain was highly infected. Only 5% of the population has been infected. For us to reach herd immunity, we would have millions.
Has been infected or have antibodies to it.
Antibodies.
5%.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, for us to get herd immunity, we would have, instead of having, how many people have died in the country? 150,000? We would probably have 1 million or 2 million. So if that's the price they're willing to pay, I think what the approach that most people have agreed and learned is that, you know, you control it until there's a vaccine. We're not going to reach herd immunity.
We may never get a vaccine.
Well, they're working on it like hell.
I know, but we may never get a vaccine. So to control it, does that mean? I'm going to make a statement that you're going to find appalling. I think
another one.
The reaction we had back in February, shutting down the entire economy because of this virus,
worked.
We're going to look back on it. We're going to say extreme overreaction.
How can you say that when New York, when we are opening up successfully, they closed it down, and now the states that did that, like New York, they're opening up slowly. They did it in New Hampshire, they did it in Maine, they did it in Massachusetts, and now we've learned, so they closed it down, and we're the New England states, we're the best states with the infection rates in the whole country now. There's like 30 states that are underwater with it.
I see the reaction to this as mostly politicized.
What?
I absolutely do.
You don't think there's any truth or all those hospitals being filled up?
I know someone very well, and I don't want to say her name here, because she teaches at a prestigious medical school. She oversees 3 ICUs in New Hampshire and Massachusetts that are dealing with COVID patients. She is a aggressive researcher on all things COVID. She's head of her particular medical field, National Association of these particular kinds of doctors. And I don't want to say what kind I talk to her regularly. She believes this is overblown, way overblown, way politicized. Now, I've known her all her life, and she has enormous credibility in my mind. She cites other doctors from all over the country who have been squelched when they publish papers, when they release YouTube videos, when they put stuff onto Facebook, espousing exactly that view.
So you don't
Okay?
believe?
I think that they are suppressed by these social media outlets.
So you don't
because
believe?
it's an unpopular and it goes against the Democrat narrative.
You don't believe that?
That's what I think.
You don't think we've had 150? You don't. When you hear the hospitalization rates in various cities, whether it's Houston or Miami now, you just don't believe those.
I do believe them.
Well, how do they? That's what the tell is. If people are going into the hospital and filling up the hospitals with COVID, do you think that's overblown?
I see these models that were used to shut down our economy. They turned out to be wrong. They turned out to be wrong by a factor of about 20. So then Fauci comes up with new models. First, Fauci says that we don't need to wear any mask. Then he says we do need to wear masks. Then he says that the latest that I heard from him, he says, well, the masks are a symbol. Yeah, they're a symbol, all right. They're a symbol of they're a signal of my virtue. See, I'm wearing a mask.
Wow.
I'm wearing a breast cancer ribbon. I drive a Prius.
You don't believe
I
in
care about
so
everybody else, and you're not wearing a mask. Therefore, you don't care as much as I do. That's the kind of virtue signaling that I see the mask.
So you don't believe
I won't say that they are completely ineffective, although I can cite you a New England Journal of Medicine study that gives you that, except if you're working in a healthcare facility, these masks are completely ineffective.
What? Well,
Yes.
healthcare is different.
That was published a month ago.
That's different. But why is it the countries who have had lockdowns and wear masks have it under control, and the ones that don't? I mean, why is that? Why is the worst countries are the anti-mask countries of America, of Brazil, of Israel, of Russia, of England, and the ones that have clamped down, South Korea, China, and it works. I mean, why is that? To me, this is climate change. This is the present value of climate change. Where I know you don't believe in climate change.
I do believe in climate change. I don't believe in human-caused climate change.
Right. So this is we'll all be dead. Both of us will be dead when we can see the results. So this is present value of all those ideas. But you just don't believe it. You just don't believe it. You just don't believe people are getting sick. You don't believe people in the hospitals.
No, you're putting words in my mouth. I believe.
So
I see that.
150. What about the 150,000 people? Did they die from COVID? 50,000 in the country.
Not quite that many, but close.
135.
Yeah, and
did they die from the?
They died. People die all the time.
No, but I mean extra
and
people.
And where did who were they? They were people in nursing homes, most of them that had a lot of comorbidities. That probably those that CDC say died of COVID, that doesn't mean they died of COVID. That means they would have had a whole panoply of medical problems, and they died. Now, they happened to have COVID at the time, but we don't know that COVID is what killed them. It could have been their diabetes that killed them. Could have been something else that killed them. That is the way statistics are compiled, and they're done that way. And also, when we say there are all these new cases, we don't know that they're new cases. They're people who have tested positive, but they may have had the thing for months. Okay, they're not new cases.
I
The way
realize
the media
that.
is reporting all these statistics
it's the hospitalization
is skewed.
rate. No, it's not skewed.
Yes, it is.
The 150,000 people are people who died that wouldn't have died. They have COVID.
Not necessarily.
Yes,
that doesn't mean that at all.
Next time I'll bring it in, but there's a total statistic that says you can predict how many people are going to die in any state, any country, in a year. Like within a certain factor of probability. And all these places where we've assigned all these deaths to COVID, it went way up. Like 150,000 extra people died in this country because they died from something and they had COVID. So if you don't think there's a
somebody in a nursing
relation,
home is a camel with a lot of straws on them, okay? And they're there because they need a lot of care, because their family, they require more care than their family can take care of. And very few people leave a nursing home and go home and get better and go home. They're there to die, all right? And most of them do. Most of the deaths
nice
are attributed to COVID, even if they're not caused by COVID.
But it is. That's what I'm saying, it is. You could make that case. We have 150,000 people who have died who wouldn't have died in this country.
I've died maybe.
Every year.
It's not that many, but close. Over 100,000 people. If you said that, I'd be safe.
135.
Okay.
Okay, go.
What? How much
We're
time
done.
we have?
We're done.
We're out of time. That's the hour.
Hope you wear your mask,
Holy
Tom.
smokes, I
I,
didn't even
I was
see it.
not a mask person, but I am now.
Okay, it's in my truck. Folks, thank you. We got heated today over several items, and unlike the last show we did together where things were pretty sedate. But so yeah, that's how it goes. Folks, thank you for coming, and Mark, thank you for being here, and be back in 2 weeks with David Jones, history teacher at Freiburg Academy. Thank you.